All right, well, thank you, everyone. I will reiterate, please make sure your phones are off, that we don't have any outside distractions. And once we get started, please remain in your seat as a way to not distract the rest of the people that are here. So my name is Vicki Werner, and I've been a past life regression therapist since 2007. Although I've had a fascination with what goes on the other side my entire life. And in fact, in 2012, I had a near-death experience where I crossed over, and that story is in my book, The Secret to Healing and Recovery, and it talks about my journey into the other side and then coming back knowing that there was going to be years and years of healing that was going to take place. During that time when I crossed over, I saw how each member of my family was going to live their life if I decided to continue to cross over. Now, there is an interesting thing about when people have near-death experiences. They typically, most people will have some kind of barrier that will stop them from progressing any further. They may have, if it's not their time to cross over, they may have a guide, a family member that is deceased, a loved one, or a representation of their spiritual or religious figure, such as Jesus or Buddha, that may present to them as someone that they trust, giving them insight, saying you have this option, because we ultimately do have that option. But for me, it was important to be shown that if I made that decision, the consequences of that decision. And the primary consequence was our 7-year-old daughter, I was told, that was not going to progress and live her life purpose had I chosen to cross over. And now she's graduating next week. She's Student of the Year in physics. She has a scholarship to the University of Utah to be an architect, and is a brilliant, brilliant girl. And it was very interesting. What I saw is the trauma of losing me. She became almost mute for quite a while because the trauma was so intense and was not going to pursue anything education. So this is just the very first step of my own personal experience of what that is like. But as far as reincarnation, I learned about that word when I was 6 years old. My parents were part of a religious organization, and they were kicked out of that religion for political reasons, not because anybody did anything wrong. But during that time, my grandparents, my uncles and aunts, my parents, all of them were kicked out of the religion at the same time. And so they were grappling for what was real, what was true. They had a really strong belief in the faith, and then was rejected by the faith. And so that obviously would cause some duress to anybody, because it is your anchor, our religious faith, or it tends to be our anchor to not only our world today, but our world beyond us and beyond our perception. And so my grandparents, they started dabbling in psychic readings. They had automatic writing sessions done, and they had regressions done. And there was a day, my grandmother and my aunts and mom, they were all just in the sewing room as a bunch of hens talking. And my grandmother said, well, I just learned yesterday that one of her sons, my uncle, I learned that he was a woman in a past life. And my whole family was like, what? How is that even possible? Because there was no religious teachings that taught that reincarnation was a case in their religion. However, most religions do either claim that there is past lives or have references in their spiritual text of past lives. But most religions don't necessarily put attention on that, because they want you to be put your filter through the attention of wherever their leaders are and the direction that they're wanting as one. And when you have free agency and you have a direct line to God, then it kind of bypasses the need of a religion per se. And so as a way to limit that. But back to the story, they had this conversation, and I was just sitting outside. I was laying down on the carpet in the hall listening, because I wasn't allowed in the room, but I was just like listening to things, so fascinated. And I just remember like saying the word reincarnation on my tongue, and then putting that in my brain, saying, remember that word. And I remember as 6 years old, I was trying to spell the letters phonetically in my mind so that I wouldn't forget. So I have had this lifelong fascination, and one of the things that started to come to clarity is in that same home my father built, there was a double layer, and the basement level had windows that would look out over the street after the sidewalk, and so you could see everybody's legs as they passed through to the front door. One of my natures at that time this was down in the playroom. This is where we spent most of our time. Our television was there, where the kids hung out. But every time I would see men's legs go past that window, I would scramble near the door to the coat closet and hide behind the coats and then practice breathing without making sound. And I would practice all the time. And so when somebody had a baby, I had a younger sister who was crying, when there was a baby crying, I would do that, and not having my mom didn't even know that I did that for many, many years, because I would just very covertly hide behind the coat closets and always practice breathing without making any sound. And I was I got very good about that. It was many years later that I had a regression where I saw that I had been during the Nazi regime, and I was in hiding with my family in an area that we had little tiny windows where we were able to see where men's feet were when people would walk, and we had to always be as quiet as we could. And if there was ever a need for somebody to come in, we had to, make it so that we weren't found. And adding the caveat to that is what ended up having us be found was the baby had cried, and somebody had overheard that. And so that's one of many, many stories that I think we can all relate, that we have some kind of mannerism, some kind of behavior, a phobia, an experience, a correlation with something, and not really know why. Some people may have a fascination with the Titanic, or people may have a fascination with an eruption of a volcano, or an area, or a geographic type thing, or a culture, and not really know why we have that level of fascination. So, as an understanding of why we're here on this planet is Earth is a school. We chose this experience, and it is one of the most lowest density areas. Although Earth is beautiful, and I love this planet very, very much, it also has some very heavy aspects to it. And one of those heavy aspects is we live in this duality world. This 3D world is the world of duality. And in this duality, there's going to be light and dark. And many people will choose life experiences that are quite challenging. And in the conscious mind is saying, I would never choose to be born to an alcoholic father who beat me all the time, and my mother who was too weak to stand up to me, and no financial resources, and a level of poverty, and where I had siblings who abused me. We're going to always say that. Nobody on a conscious level would want to sign up for that experiences. However, from the spiritual aspect and from the soul's evolution, we can sign up for an aspect of knowing what it's like to be removed from love, because love is all encompassing. It is everything about the spirit world. Is we could sum down to one word, which is love. And to know that love at a deeper level, many people will see an aspect of being removed from love. But we are here to create. We are creators. We are here to, we all will have some level of being comfortable in our space, and then wanting something to be more, wanting to create more, having more love, more finances, more growth, more education, more fitness, whatever. We want to create an up level all of the time, because if we're not creating, we're dying. If we're not expanding, we're shrinking. And so love and serve is something we're all here to do. We're all teachers, and we're all students in the life experience. And none of us are here to do it alone, although many people as a survival or a trauma response may think that they have to do it alone as a way to self-preserve, that other people aren't going to let them down. And so they may take that belief system, but ultimately we are here for one another and to be of service. We do obviously have the emotional aspect. That is one of the primary relationships we have in the physical body, is our relationship with our emotions. And our emotions, quantum physics will indicate a lot about how our emotions will it will either upregulate or downregulate gene expression. It can either expand consciousness or shrink consciousness. Our reality with the quantum and the field around us, we are either drawing from the field in a weakened state, or we are adding to the field in a more enhanced state. So know that every one of us signed up for our life experiences, and we all signed up for them for reasons beyond our conscious thinking. If we're going to try to analyze why we have this experience or this relationship, then it shrinks our possibility and understanding. And this is why a regression is really powerful, because you can see things out free of the analytical mind. So consciousness and perception survives the body. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of accounts. One of the accounts is what I was referring to in my own experience, about how when I had that near-death experience, that I experienced the bigger picture. I was moved to different areas in the home where my family was when I had left the body. I saw my physical body on the bed, but I was moved to different areas. So consciousness survives the body, and also perception survives the body. There's accounts of people who have had near-death experiences that had either been blind or deaf in their physical form, and then had a near-death experience, and they were able to see or hear experiences that were around them that they would have not had the capacity. Those are just a couple of examples. There is an understanding that most people who have a near-death experience will come back with some level of gift. They will have some intuitive nature that is enhanced, some perceptions that are enhanced. For me, one of the aspects of my journey was I was taken to an area where there were 3 altars. And the first altar was the most illuminated. This altar was huge, and they all had a lot of gems and gold, precious metals, and it was very, very beautiful. And the first one was illuminated, but the other 2 were dark. And as I said, there's always going to be some kind of barrier that'll prevent you from going any further. But I could see a long, dark hallway behind that, and then it was a barrier. There was like some kind of wall that it was made very, very clear to me that if I decided to go that further out, I couldn't come back. So there was an area where I knew that this was the stopping point. But one of those things that was shown to me is they said I was being given 3 gifts, and the first gift was the gift of sight. And I have had a greater understanding of sight, and I see things a lot even that my clients are experiencing. So that's just an example of what can happen with somebody if we expand our consciousness beyond the physical body. So as examples of past lives, there's a number of books that are written. I use this language a lot because a lot of religious texts that may say that reincarnation doesn't exist, or past lives, or any of those things don't exist. And the way that I will say that is there are thousands and thousands of documented cases that are proving that it exists, and there's 0 documented cases that says that it doesn't exist. There are going to be people who will profess that, but they don't have any evidence to say otherwise. And some of that evidence is The Boy Who Knew Too Much is a book written by a family. Now, a lot of these books that are written by family members of their young children, very often they have no relationship with past lives. They often don't believe in past lives initially. They don't have any religious background, and so when their children come forward with those kind of experiences, then they don't have anything to relate to. But then they start researching and going, this is unusual, I better start listening to this. This is out of character. And so one of the ones in The Boy Who Knew Too Much is a book about the boy who is reincarnation of Lou Gehrig. And there was a special, their family was watching a documentary or something, and they saw Babe Ruth in this, and he said, that man was really mean to me. And so she researched and said, yeah, Babe Ruth was actually had kind of a tension between the two of them. Another one is Soul Survivor, is a book about a World War II man in the military, and he was shot down during that time, and then when he was shot down, the plane exploded in the gasoline, and he burned his legs, and he died in fire and drowning right there in a little alcove. But he would wake up all the time and start screaming and flailing his legs, saying that he was on fire, and his mom didn't have any understanding as to what. And then he kept explaining the plane, and later on he was able to meet people who were in his in his group, and when he was actually alive in the other life. And there's some really beautiful accounts of women who have passed over and met her adult children years later as another individual. Those books I remember reading as a teenager, and they fascinated me. But other ones is there's a young boy named A. Jaswal, that he was a 7-year-old surgeon in India, and he was a very, very, very skilled surgeon. Or the 3-year-old who can play the entire Beethoven symphony. Those things are not naturally innate in the overarching populace. So that would be signs of somebody who had some kind of skill or some kind of relationship, and they bring that forward. So there are thousands of documented cases that are so fascinating. Even in our own family, my daughter, who's almost 20 now, when she was about 2 years old, I would be getting her ready for bed, and I would be combing her hair, and she would just kind of lean against me, or when I'd be reading her book at night in her bed, she'd lean against me, and she'd always say, Mommy, I love you so much, but I really miss my other mommy. And I knew better than to hush that down, which a lot of parents tend to do, that they don't understand what their children are doing. The veil is much thinner in these children until about the age of 5. So that window between their ability to communicate and the veil being open is the most likely many children will come forward with information that they may not have any reference to in this outer world. And so much so that children have been documented to tell the street that they lived on, the job that they had, the name of their boss, the name of their husband or children, in areas that no longer even exist. As an example, there was one book of a woman who was in Ireland and she had never been to England, but she talked about how in a past life she had to leave her children, and she described the hospital room. And so she had 6 young children who was devastated, dying and leaving those children, but 5 of them were still alive. But those accounts are just absolutely fascinating. And so I'm going to invite you to just, if wherever you are on the belief spectrum, knowing that you can be any skin tone, any culture, any nationality, and either gender. So just know that just because you're a female or a male in this lifetime is not indicative that will always be the case. Although it's common for most people, when I ask what gender they are, they will quickly try to go back into the conscious analytical mind and go back to what's familiar. But I'm going to invite you to set all of that down. So why would you want to have a regression? The most common, sure, there's a level of curiosity that's fascinating, just a need for something, a spiritual understanding. But fears and phobias are very, very common, such as, why do I have a fear of being in a plane? Or why do I have a fear of being alone? Or why do I have a fear of being in a big city? That kind of thing. But it can also be very bizarre fears. And, as an example, somebody who's so afraid of water that as a young child, her mother can't even bathe her, because they have to sponge bathe her because she was so petrified of water, and they found that she had drowned, of course. Or for instance, I can't have, this is about as much jewelry as I ever will wear, but I can't handle anything around my wrists, a watch, a bracelet, any kind, no matter how, even a string that is so benign in so many ways. But I saw a past life where I was was very hungry and I stole a loaf of bread, and because she was starving, and the persecution didn't fit the crime, and I ended up being in prison for 17 years. And I was shackled and chained and shackled to my wrists and ankles, which is very interesting because in this life, my wrists and ankles tend to have some weakness to it. That's just a propensity that I have from years of just trying to break free from that and the rage and anger of some kind of authority figure imprisoning me. And there were barnacles on the walls. It was like a seaport area, and there was barnacles on the walls. And anybody who knows me, saying the word barnacle around me just puts me in this elevated like cringe. I can't stand that. It's like the fingernails on chalkboard aspect to me. I like, don't try to torment with me with barnacles. It won't end well for either one of us because I have that association that is really a struggle. Now, addressing health issues is a really great reason why somebody would want one, and we would go to a life where we would go to the root of that. We think the root of our health issues are related to this current lifetime, although that's not necessarily the case. Mine was, I saw a life about digestive issues and how I was poisoned, and it's so fascinating, and we can reformulate our association with that experience. Is really good. And of course, have a deeper understanding of the relationships that we have and why we have that challenging daughter or that father that is just always just puts a heavy hand on us kind of experiences. So we all bring in knowledge, skills, and vibration that is unique to us. That's why we each have a purpose. We each contribute through our skills and through our understanding. And just some people come as a vibrational holder. And you may think, well, what is my life purpose? I'm here to hold the space. I'm here to lift up the energy. I'm here to like absorb some of the negativity. Can be very common for somebody to experience. Love, learn, and create are always going to be some level of what your purpose is. And so when people like, I would say 99% of people come, one of their questions is always going to be, what is my purpose? Because we feel so disconnected with our purpose, and our purpose is never going to be a singular experience. It's never going to be somebody's going to show. When you're 34, you're going to come across an elderly man who was in the military and he was hungry and homeless, and you fed him and took him home and then sent him on his way. That singular experience was a beautiful thing, but it's not going to be the purpose. Our purpose is going to be many layers and not a singular experience, and it's going to be bled into our relationships and our environment our entire lifetime rather than a single incident or a single contribution, which could be supportive of that, but not necessarily that is your purpose. And when we ask what our relationship is with our purpose, it's always going to be what brings you joy. Past lives don't necessarily fascinate everybody, but they fascinate me. And hundreds and hundreds of regressions later, people may have a very, very simple life where they lived on a farm and they counted chickens, and a loved one went off to war and came back, and then they raised their farm. That could be very, very simple, but it's so fascinating to me as to what somebody's level of wanting to have chickens in this life and why it's so important is just as an example. Those things are very fascinating to me. Mm-hmm. We can have very challenging lives, and we can have very regenerating life, very simple life. Some people sign up for a very simple life without a whole lot of growth, and it can be for a number of reasons. One is they may be a relatively new spirit to this physical realm and want to just kind of tiptoe into it rather than go into a really extreme one. We may have had a lifetime that was very challenging in the past, maybe have taken our life, or it was really had a lot of intensity. And so that person wants something like, hey, I'm going back, but I'm going to do a little bit easier this time. I bit off more than what I can chew last time, and I know better. I'm going to do baby steps of that. So those are just a couple of examples of why, it's easy to judge another person's life when we have the outside experience. Another way that we judge other people's lives is we hear about women who are, the sacrificial lamb as their children. They do everything. They're just always there, the go-to person for everybody, rescues everybody. And then they get older, and then they get rheumatoid arthritis and incapacitated, a lot of pain, and can't really take care of any, and other people have to take care of them. And our conscious mind, like, that isn't fair. She doesn't deserve that. She was so service-oriented that she doesn't deserve. And I always encourage that we remove observability out of the equation, because what you're associating as your understanding is this small window of this soul's journey, this very within just your understanding of this physical life, knowing that she may have signed up for that, to have that experience for a number of reasons, and not really our place to make a judgment call on it. So Akashic records are something that we usually will see in our journey when you have a private session with me. In the Akashic records, it's called the Book of Life. It's where all expression is shared. Not only is your experience from your sensory, your thoughts, your emotions, your behavior, your actions, but your impact of those around you is also in your Akashic records. These Akashic records come through in our DNA. It is in our DNA and in our field, and so it's accessible to us completely. But everything that has ever been experienced in the soul experience from your conception as a soul is in your Akashic records. And it's very fascinating, because you can go to a lifetime of, like, what is my relationship with this? And you can also download information of lifetimes where you've had a really strong skill or an enhancement that you want to enhance is something that we can look into. So common concerns about a regression. One is, I think that everybody has some level of fear of being controlled, especially in today's world. We understand what manipulation and control can start to look at, and the impact that not only can that have on a culture, but what it has on humanity. And how people, in the concentration camps, they would sell each other out for a rotten potato, because we will ultimately all want to survive. That is the instinct of our brain. It has one role, and it's to keep us alive. And so we will do whatever it takes to survive experiences. But being controlled by environments is something that we all have some association with. I would say 100% of people have issues with authority. And this could be your religion, your upbringing, your parents, some kind of coach or teacher above you, or even an older sibling, that we all have issues with authority. We don't want somebody to be the in-between of us in our relationship with our higher self or with our God. And so as far as regressions, you're in complete control of that. My role is to be a cheerleader and somebody that helps hand you the baton to keep moving forward, not getting stuck in one area. And I just know the right questions and the right direction to take you, but you're ultimately in control. When we do this session today, you will go to where your higher self will direct it. I'm not going to direct you to a specific place. So that's just something to take into consideration. What if you're making it up? And I always play devil's advocate. Well, what if you are making that up? Why would you make that up? What would be your association with this experience? In a one-on-one session, I'm monitoring a lot of details that the client isn't necessarily aware of. One, when we are in a regression, hypnosis is simply, we are in a hypnotic state. All of us go into a hypnotic state many times throughout the day. And it's the theta brainwave state, or a low alpha state. And it's the state of creativity, inspiration, and intuition. So you can have an inspiration and you can have intuition, both. But when something gets downloaded into us, and sometimes we have this sudden thought or this belief all of a sudden that just inspiration, you're like, well, what was the source of that information? Where did it originate from? We think, well, I just thought of it. Well, why did you think of it? How did you think of it? What was the association of thinking of it? So coming back to just, what if I'm making it up? Set it on the shelf and let it go. Because if you try to analyze, you're going to enter the analytical mind instead of the creative mind, and you're going to shut down your possibility. So I'm going to encourage you, just put that on the shelf. It doesn't matter, just here to have a great experience. And there is a possibility, there's about a 10% of the population is unable to see a past life. But I will say there's a couple of reasons for that. One, in a regression, some people may present as a means of they're fearful that that they've done bad things, that they stole candy when they were 7 in a grocery store, or that they did prank calls to a restaurant and ordered a bunch of food and never picked it up as a teenager. So you have this fear of I don't want to be judged, so I'm fearful of seeing anything that you're going to learn about me. And I know this sounds awful, but I always use this as a reference. I saw a life where I beheaded my husband in a past life. And we're happily married today. So I think if you can have that experience and know that you just never know the relationship that you have, and it's okay. Historically, there has been some enormous challenges and horrific experiences that have happened in human history. There's been complete genocide of cultures, and there has been hangings and beheadings, and I say I have witnessed literally every single way that somebody can die. I've seen it. Everything from beheadings to burning at the stakes, poisonings, smuggling, trying to stop somebody from breathing, any of those kind of things, drownings, they all are possible in our past life. And so if you see anything that feels a little struggle, just know that you're in a very safe place, that I'm going to make sure that you're safe. There is no threat. We're just viewing things. If you feel a little bit of a concern, then if you see something that is a stark contrast of what you want to see, bring yourself back in your present body and just kind of rub your arms a little bit. That'll just bring you back here very quickly on your own. But I'm going to monitor a number of things, and I'm going to encourage your higher self is never going to show you things that you're not ready to see. So don't go into any level of fear or questioning anything. Just trust that everything's okay. Everything's okay, and you're here to experience a beautiful healing experience. So if you don't see a past life, enjoy the guided imagery and enjoy the meditation. Just be in a meditative state and just allow yourself to be in a relaxed state, knowing that you're getting some kind of insight and wisdom. And if you're not seeing things, remember that you have other senses. So you can have a knowing, a sense, a feeling, a smell. Any of those things can also play a role. So just be here to have a good time. That's going to be the key to all of this. So I'm going to say what I thought. Okay, yeah, this is just basically, we all visualize, all of us visualize all of the time. You wake up in the morning and you visualize the outfit you're going to wear. You before you go into the kitchen, you visualize what you're going to be fixing for breakfast. We all visualize, when we have a work experience, or say, for instance, you are anticipating a confrontation with a mother-in-law. You're visualizing that experience all the time. You're not so much even just the visual, but you're also in conversation. You've had the conversation, and so quite often you're emotionally aroused before you even arrive because you're anticipating the experience. So just know that you can visualize your past just as much your future. In the quantum, we are the eternal present moment. And quantum physics has proven that our attention moves from energy to matter once we place our attention on it. So rather than a linear experience of a past life, that we've had this life in the 1600s, this 1800, 1900, all of that kind of stuff, flip it on its head and go straight down the arrow, that we all are in the eternal present moment. And so when we place our attention on a past life, that is as real to us today as where we are in this physical life. And it can get kind of hairy if it's new to you, when you talk about parallel lives or multiple lives or overlapping lives or having, any of those kind of stuff, like, whoo. And then you add in like lives on different planets, life in different life forms. And so we're going to keep it as simple. We're going to go to a life in Earth, on Earth, in this physical body. So, okay. So hypnotic state is theta brainwave state. I kind of went through this a little bit. It is the state where we fall into this hypnotic state very easily. The classic is you drove from one place to another and you don't even remember passing anything. You're just kind of through, because you're in that hypnotic state, fixing a meal. It's so natural, and it's so much hardwired in your brain that you don't have to think about it. It's very different when you're 16 learning how to drive and when you're 30 and you're driving all the time. You don't think about putting the gears into place and looking at the brake. You just do those things naturally. So I want to get really moving forward here. So group progression is not going to be as deep. I'm not going to be able to ask you specific questions to yourself. It's going to be very all-encompassing. You're going to have to babysit yourself a little bit in that regard. So the keys that are the most important is I'm going to encourage you no talking at all once we finish this session. I'm going to do a little bit of a practice exercise to get you in this, but we're going to just a little bit of visualization, check in and see if anybody has any questions. But the private's going to be a lot more detailed, and those ones are much longer. Those ones are about 3 hours versus this one will be an hour. So tips for success: keep your attention on the sound of my voice and what you see. Your mind is going to wander. Everybody's minds wander. If you catch yourself wandering, wondering what you're going to have for lunch today or an appointment later on this afternoon, bring yourself back to the sound of my voice. That's going to be the guiding point, and just go into breath. When I ask you a question, trust the very first thing that comes to your mind. Don't try to analyze it, just trust whatever comes and stay with it. I'm going to encourage you to use as much of your senses to see the entire scene rather than just the one thing that I'm asking you. Give yourself permission to expand your perception. And then use as many of your senses and keep your eyes closed. That's always my only rule that I ever have for any of my clients is keep your eyes closed the entire duration. We're blocking out outside sensory. I want you to go within and your relationship with the divine. So, and in prep really quick, take just a moment and think about something that you want an answer to, something that is important to you that you just have some curiosity. Focus on the visual aspects, trust whatever comes, and then again, don't analyze it till after. You can analyze all you want once we're finished, but keep yourself out of the analytical mind and just have some fun with this. So I think that's it. All right, is there any questions that we have? Awesome. Okay, all right, so what I'm going to begin with here is I'm going to just do a little bit of a practice exercise initially. Go ahead and put your eye masks on if you would like. I'm just going to have you do a quick visual just to practice seeing something. So have a sip of water. Take a deep breath. Relax your body. Just focus on your body, get nice and relaxed. Breathing in peace and tranquility. And exhale any tension in the body. Relaxing your feet, your legs, up into your hips. Just feel your lower extremities sinking down into the chair, nice and relaxed. Trust whatever you see as you sink deeper into the chair. Relax your abdomen. You may feel a little anxious or nervous, excited, curious. All of these are just fine. So just relax the body. The busyness of your belly. And just trust that if there's any part of your body that's signaling for your attention, just gently place light around that part of your body and allow your body to just take care of itself, trusting that all is well. Continuing to relax, move your attention up into your chest. And just breathe in peace and tranquility. And exhale any tension. You can kind of adjust your shoulders or your neck, get nice and comfortable. And just command your body to relax. We're the overarching control here. Just relax. Relax. Feel the rhythm of your heart, the energy of the heart field around you. Moving your attention up. See a blank. Nice and relaxed. I'm going to tell you that this information, the door, you're entering a vortex, and this door is going to stay open for 3 days. So even no matter what you see today, you may see more down the road, and so trust this. We're going to do a practice exercise before we go into the actual experience. The first one is listening to the sound of my voice. You are standing on the corner of a very busy street in a big city. It's a lot of traffic, a lot of noise, a lot of things going on. It's very, very busy around you. You see the buildings, you may see vehicles, lots of people. See the scene and fill in all the details. What are the clothing that other people are wearing? What's the clothing you're wearing? Where are you on this street? Do you recognize the city? Scan the area, just get very familiar. Try to listen to the sounds. Notice the weather. Paint the picture. Okay, now leave that scene. Leave that scene. Now you're standing on a fishing pier, looking out at the water. There may be boats on the water, may have people fishing, but you're standing looking out at the water, and as you're standing on the fishing pier, what do you see? Is there anything on the horizon beyond the water? Do you smell fish? The ocean? What is the pier made of? You see, is it weathered and worn? Is it new? Let's paint the picture. You can hear seagulls. Any of these are options. All right, I'm gonna leave that scene, and now you're standing on a platform in a train station. At this train station, there's a train coming down the tracks, and you can see it and hear it. Try to feel the vibration of the platform as the train is coming closer and pulls into the station. As you're standing on this platform, watching the train come in, what details do you see? What do you hear? Notice the train. All right, I'm gonna leave that scene and come back to this room. Take your eye masks off and visit. We're gonna visit for just a little bit. Did anybody have any problems seeing anything? Was everybody able to did you see anything at all?
I can remember, but I'm they call it non-visual visualizer.
Okay, so there actually is there's a word for it, and it's hard for me to pronounce, but there are people who can't see. Some people will be from a trauma experience. They block their ability to see in their mind's eye. So with that, I'm going to encourage just see from what you recall. So we all have an association with pier, city, train. So recall from a perspective of paint the picture yourself, because you'll get insight that will still come in. I know that you have been a spiritual seeker all of your life, so I'm not concerned about your ability to receive insight. So whether you see anything or not is like I said, it's just one of the senses that we're going to use. And maybe you're here to enhance other senses. So put your attention on that. What about anybody else? Does anybody want to give any feedback? As far as the city, go ahead.
I was in the same city the whole time.
Okay,
I-
so you just moved to different areas of the city?
Yeah, yeah.
City just happened to be a beachfront city.
Yeah. Well, it was New York, because I was three-corner in the train and
Yeah,
here, so
yeah.
it was New York a long time ago, but it was definitely.
Yeah, that's really interesting. You may go to that again. So just be open to that. It might be a lifetime that you have in that area. I will say most people don't go to the easy areas where they had lifetimes that they were super simple and not a whole lot goes on. Or you won't necessarily go to a lifetime that's was really happy and joyful and prosperous. Because there's not a lot of lesson that you need to learn from that. You experienced it, it was wonderful, you grew, but you don't have any kind of luggage that you're bringing forward to heal from that. So it can be possible to go. Does anybody want to share anything that they saw specifically? Yeah?
I felt the vibration of the train.
Oh, that's great.
It really was amazing.
And what era was the train? Was it like a futuristic bullet train or an old-fashioned coal?
It probably was between the old and
The next generation? Yeah. Yeah. Did anybody see old trains, smokestack or anything like that? You did?
Yeah, and a lot of aroma.
Yeah?
Yeah, like the grease and the
Oh,
smoke and
Yeah.
and the wheels.
Fascinating. Anybody see a futuristic train, like a bullet train? Yeah, it's very fascinating. All right. Okay, so the memories are here. We all are accessing some level of our consciousness that correlates with that experience. So just trust all of that. I'm gonna ask you to put your eye masks back on. We're gonna move kind of quickly through here. If you have any questions, I can address this after, but just enter the experience, close your eyes. And as a reminder, when we are finished, I'm gonna ask you to not talk at all. I want you to absorb as much of your own experience as possible. Take a nice deep breath. Trust what you're about to see. And I want you to begin by standing outside of the place where you live currently, in your current life. Whether it's your home, apartment. But I want you to be standing outside of the place where you live. You see this every day. Notice colors, yard, front door. See this door, and I want you to place your hand on the door, feeling the doorknob, open the door, and step inside. What is the first room that you come into? Identify this room. You see it every single day. See the details, furniture, artwork, knickknacks, flooring. What are the colors that stand out? Notice the colors. Now, if you weren't already in the kitchen, I want you to enter the kitchen. Where is the stove located compared to where you are? Where's the refrigerator? Where do you sit down and eat your meals? Now go into the bedroom where you sleep. Scan the room. What furniture is in this room? See all the details. Now look at the wall around the room. Scan the walls, and I want you to look for a wall in the room that does not have a door. In your bedroom, I want you to find an area that does not have a door. But I want you to make a door on this wall. You can use a magic wand, You can cut it, you can visualize it, you can command it, however you want, but I want you to make a door appear in the wall that normally does not have a door. Now, open the door. And when you open the door, I want you to see steps going down, down, down in front of you. See these steps going down in front of you. What kind of steps are they? You can use a railing if you want, but I want you to walk down the steps. And at the bottom of the steps is a long hallway going away from you. This hallway is illuminated, so it's not dark. You're safe. But I want you to walk down the hallway. Walking down the hallway, and in the distance, you see at the end of the hallway there is an opening. You can see light down in there. There is an opening at the end of the hallway. Walk towards that opening. Walk down the hall towards the opening to the very end. You are now standing in front of this opening. This is a doorway. The opening is a portal to the past. You know that when you step through this opening, you will be in another time, at another place, where there is information to help you the very best way that it can. You will now enter and step through this opening to another time and another place. You have now stepped through this opening, and you are now in another time and another place. Look around you and see where you are. Are you inside or outside? Become aware of the surroundings and see all of the details around you. Any sounds that you hear? Anything that stands out? Now I want you to become aware of yourself, aware of the body. Scan the body and see what kind of clothing you are wearing. Notice you can start at your feet. Do you have bare feet or do you have any kind of shoe on? Are you standing on dirt, grass, carpet? What's below your feet? Just going up. Notice the clothing that you're wearing. I'm going to ask a few questions and I want you to pick it up immediately. Don't analyze. First question, are you male or female? Are you young or older? Are you carrying anything in your hands or on your back? Become very familiar and aware of this body. Are you healthy and strong, or do you consider yourself weak and fragile? What are you doing? What is the activity you're engaged in? Are there other people around you? Now move forward and go to the place where you live in that other body. We're going to leave this scene and you're going to move forward to the place where you live. The place where you eat and sleep. And you are now standing in front of that place. What does it look like from the outside? Does it look like you have wealth or poverty? Is it old? It could be a teepee, a hut, an apartment, a cave. Any of those are options. Now go inside to the place where you live. Enter this place and see the rooms. It may be just an old cabin with a single room, maybe many, many rooms. See where you cook your food and how the food is prepared. Is the food prepared outside, inside? See yourself eating your meal. We move towards the end of the day and you're eating the dinner, the final meal, supper for the evening. What kind of food are you eating? Is there anyone sitting with you? Parents, spouse, children? Who's with you? Notice any association. If there's anyone that's living with you in this place, you will see them with you now. And you are able to identify your connection with them in your current life. If they are in this current life, you will be able to identify that. See if anyone is with you. Now leave that scene and I want you to move forward and see what it is you do on a day-to-day basis. How do you spend the majority of your time in that lifetime? Do you have a job or an occupation? Move to a time when you're doing what it takes up the majority of your day. See yourself doing it now. Now I'm going to ask you to leave that scene and move to an important day. We're going to leave that scene and I want you to move to a day that's very important and significant to you, a day that you consider important. You are now moving to a day that is very important. You are there now. What's happening? I want you to go to the moment that is the most significant in this day. Why is this day important to you? What takes place? Now I'm going to ask you to leave that scene and we're going to move forward to another day as the same individual, another day that's very important to you. Something else happens and it's a day that you consider very important. What's taking place? What's happening? All right, we're going to leave that scene and again, I'm going to ask you to move forward to another day that's very important. A day that you consider to be important where something else has happened. It's another important day. What do you see? Where are you? You're standing, sleeping next to somebody. Any of those are options, but what's happening? And why is this day important to you? Now, I'm going to ask you to leave that scene and I want you to move forward to the last day of your life in that lifetime. The lifetime that we are looking at, I want you to move forward to the very last day of your life and let's see what's happening. You're now in the very last day of your life. You can see everything that's happening around you. It's the last day of your life in this lifetime. Where are you? What's happening? old, sick, injured? Why are you dying? Are there loved ones around you? Are you by yourself? All right. Whatever has happened has already happened. You're now, I'm going to count to 3, and I want you to lift up out of the body. You're at the moment when you lift up out of the body effortlessly. Counting forward from 1, 2, and 3. You are now out of the body, hovering above the body. Down in that body. How do you feel about that individual? The life that you lived? From that perspective, you can look back at your entire lifetime and see all the different perspectives, all the experiences. You also can see how effortlessly a soul leaves the body and how easy this is to be free of the body. And looking at this experience, I want you to scan the area. Is there anyone in that lifetime that you are now connected with in your present lifetime? They can be a different gender and a different association. Trust that you know. If there is anyone in that lifetime that is in your current lifetime in some way, make that connection now. Trust it. Every lifetime has a lesson. Every lifetime has a purpose. As you look at this lifetime, what was the lesson to be learned? What was the lesson of that lifetime? And did you learn it? What was the purpose of that lifetime? Trust anything that comes into your mind. Now I want you to see your primary guide standing before you. You've left that body and left that life. I want you to see your primary guide standing directly in front of you. How does this guide greet you? Is your guide male or female? Angelic? Wise? Does your guide have a name that they want you to refer to them as? Obviously, this is for you, not for them. In your mind's eye, I want you to ask your guide a question. You can choose any question you want. Trust the very first thing that you hear. Ask your question to your guide and let your guide respond. Do so now. This guide also has a gift for you, along with a message beyond your question. Your guide has a gift for you and is giving you that gift now. Maybe in a small package, maybe a symbolic, that the guide is handing you a gift right now. What is that gift? What does your guide tell you regarding this gift? Now I want you to ask your guide in your mind's eye, are there any other messages for you that this guide wants you to know? Any other messages? As you're standing in front of this guide, I want you to scan the body. Scan the body and see if there's anything that you need to be aware of in the physical body. Scan the body. Any adjustments you need to make in lifestyle and health. Supplements. Detoxing, behaviors. What does your guide want you to know? Now I want you to thank your guide for the information. You're welcome to ask, is there anything I need to know to build and enhance my relationship with you? And just for fun, just say, is there anything else that I need to be aware of in the coming months? Any relationships I need to cultivate or put my attention on? Any business decisions? Just for fun. Give me something to create. Anything I need to know. Your guide wants you to be happy, feel joy, experience everything that life has to offer. We like to thank our guide, allow that all of the energy go back where it belongs, with much love and gratitude for the insight and wisdom, knowing that this information will support you as you move forward in your current life. I want you to come back into this room. And as you come back into this room, I'm going to count to 10. And at the count of 10, you will be wide awake and feeling wonderful all over. Remembering everything that you saw, all the insight and wisdom, so you can write it down. It will be in your memory. You are becoming conscious of this room again, very much aware of the physical surroundings, knowing that you're in this room with me. As I count back to 10, you will be wide awake, feeling wonderful all over. 1, 2, you're beginning to breathe a little faster, blood is circulating, and you're beginning to wake up now. 3, 4, aware of the physical body, very much aware of where you're seated in this room. 5, 6, aware of the surroundings around you. You're very much aware. 7, 8, you're coming up very nicely, very nicely. 9, 10, wide awake, wide awake. You can now open your eyes, feeling wonderful all over. And as you orient back into this space, without any talking, I want you to pick up your journal or any notes that you want to take and start writing everything down that you can. We'll talk about it in a moment. Don't talk to anybody. Take about 2 more minutes. Renee, you just like any kind of insight that you have or any kind of intuitive knowing. Okay, we're gonna start wrapping up, but just jot a couple of key words and come back to this. I'm going to encourage you to spend some time contemplating this. You can expand on your journal writing. Again, the intention that this portal stays open for 3 days. So you may be driving home today and just get like a download. You may just be in the shower tonight and go, oh my gosh, that makes sense why so-and-so is in my life. Any of that kind of thing. So does anybody want to share anything that they picked up? Anybody want to share? Go ahead.
Living an abundant life and having a family, and then one day the husband was gone. And we didn't know why. And so I went into sadness over that and eventually died of the grief. And on that day, he then did appear saying that he left to keep the family safe and that we're always together. And we can choose to be happy and not have the grief.
Thank you. Wow. What was your message from your guide?
It's your choice.
Oh, it's really insightful. It's beautiful. You can see how these can be quite emotional. People cry very common during a session, even though you feel like it just brings up a part of us that has just been unfulfilled. Anybody else want to share?
I had people I recognized as two family members, but they weren't who they are now.
Sure.
They were different sexes and different situations.
It always fascinates me to see a correlation because that connection isn't necessarily the same. I mean, very rarely is it the same dynamic, but you obviously can tell that. So, does anybody else want to share anything? How do you feel like you did? Does everybody feel like they were able to see things? What did you get out of the experience though?
Not what I'd hoped for. No feeling of connection. Just
Did you ever have a moment where like you had a little glimpse of anything? So it's just a relaxation. Well, I'm grateful you're here.
well, it is.
I know that can sometimes feel frustrating. My suggestion regarding this is to just ask your guides or the insight around you, ask for the universe to provide insight that's pertinent to what would benefit you now in another form. So it doesn't
Yeah,
have
and
to
it's not like I
necessarily.
don't have insight.
Sure,
I
sure.
just really want this experience, and I get it other ways.
You know, I know this isn't the case for you, but I will tell you that I have noticed I've had in the probably 80 regressions that I've done in the last year, I've had this year here, I've had 2 that really struggled going in and weren't able to see, but they both admitted that they were atheists. And so I was like, well, that's interesting. And I think that to me was indicative that we have to meet God halfway, that we have to be willing to, have a relationship with the divine. So, anybody else want to share?
I'll just share a brief thing. It was a life in Rockville, and I was married to you, but I was a woman. And you were always off on missions, traveling. And so I had to raise the kids by myself and have a garden to feed them. And so I spent my day just carrying a baby around with me and doing gardening and taking care of the yard and stuff. Kind of interesting.
It's very interesting.
And the lesson to that was that I'm coming into that aspect again because you're going to be traveling
Yeah.
again. And I was told very clearly, you're supposed to stay home and take care of the garden and take care of the kids. Kind of interesting.
No, that's very interesting. Well, I thank everyone that was here. I hope you had an enjoyable experience. I hope you learned something. So a typical regression, I would say the average regression therapist with the training that I have usually charges about $700 for a session. Mine's significantly cheaper than that because I think that's a lot. I mean, even though they are fascinating and healing, my price is $250 and you're usually with me about 3.5 hours. But anybody who is here, if you decide that you're interested down the road in having one, then I'm going to give it 10% off on that. And so I am booked for the next 3 weeks. But if you are interested in having a regression, or if you're on the live stream and see that, I rarely will do one over Zoom. They have to be vastly different than this because I can't control the environment. So I really like to have in person at 99% of the time. Under very, very unique circumstances, I'll do something over Zoom. Because I can't control whether the dog barks or neighbor comes over or their phone rings or the disconnection of the internet. So there's a number of reasons why it's beneficial to have that in person. If you ever want to schedule one in person, I don't let anybody else ever be there with you. There's one, even though you're like, oh, I'm going to tell them anyway and all that kind of stuff. Sure, you're welcome to share it with somebody and we'll record it. But if somebody gets bored or they adjust their seat or that they start coughing or any of those kind of things, then I have to babysit 2 different things, and that isn't fun for anybody because my attention needs to be on the client, and you just never know the dynamic of that individual. So that's his alarm to go over, which is fine. You can